Are you tired of playing by someone else's rules? For too long, relationships have been shaped around what men want, how men think, and how to keep a man. But what if I told you that entire playbook is becoming irrelevant? Because there's a new kind of woman who does not move by those rules. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't shrink herself to fit. She doesn't need to be chosen. She chooses. Sigma females are rewriting the entire script and doing relationships on their terms. Look, not every woman is loud about her power. Not every woman needs a spotlight to feel seen. Some women carry a quiet strength that speaks louder than any performance. That's the Sigma female, confident, independent, emotionally grounded, comfortable being her own world. And because of that, relationships look different for her. She doesn't fall for the usual tricks. She doesn't cling when things shift. When a man stops aligning with her depth, her peace, her direction, she simply walks. And that's where today's conversation begins. A lot of men don't understand why a Sigma woman loses interest. They think she's cold or hard to read. But the truth is simple. Sigma women only stay where the energy feels real. The moment a man starts performing instead of being, she checks out. No drama, no loud exit, just distance. So here's what actually causes that shift. 1. Weak ambition is one of the fastest ways a Sigma female loses interest in a man, because a Sigma female is naturally self-driven. She doesn't chase success to impress anyone or to gain social validation. Growth matters to her because she values progress, challenge, and real evolution. She wakes up with goals, visions, and standards, not because someone told her to, but because it's who she is. She wants to build, learn, and upgrade. She sees life as movement and momentum. So when she meets a man who is stagnant, unmotivated, or comfortable doing the bare minimum, she feels the disconnect instantly. It's not about money or career titles, it's about energy. A Sigma female can sense whether a man is hungry for life or just drifting. When a man lacks purpose, passion, or direction, it doesn't feel inspiring to her. It feels heavy, draining, and slow. She needs someone who moves like she does, intentional, grounded, and driven by something deeper than ego. Mediocrity doesn't spark her because mediocrity has no depth, no fire, and no forward motion. A Sigma female doesn't look for perfection, but she does look for effort. Not the performative kind where someone talks big dreams but never backs them. She looks for consistency. She looks for discipline. She notices the small things, like how he handles setbacks, how he spends his free time, and whether he actually follows through on what he says. A man who waits for motivation to start is not compatible with her. She respects those who move even when it's hard. To a Sigma female, hunger is not just about ambition in the physical world. It's about mental hunger too. It's curiosity, depth, awareness, emotional maturity, and inner strength. A man who has dreams but no action doesn't impress her. A man who complains but never changes doesn't attract her. A man who lives on autopilot repels her. She wants someone who chooses to grow because growth is a choice. She isn't asking for him to be perfect or wildly successful. She's asking for him to be alive on the inside, to care, to want something real, to be bold enough to take risks, to be awake in his own life. When she sees a man settle for less than he's capable of, she knows the relationship will eventually drain her. She understands that partnership means influence, and if she connects to someone who is stagnant, she risks slowing herself down, and she will never sabotage her calling for comfort. She needs a man who is building something even if it's small. She needs someone who shows effort without needing applause. She needs someone who is hungry for growth the way she is. Hunger is magnetic to her because hunger means life, and a Sigma female always chooses life over comfort. She values a man who wakes with intention, who doesn't just talk about becoming better, but actually works on it. Even if he's at the beginning, having a real vision matters. It's the mindset, the direction, and the willingness to grow that keeps her interest steady and her respect present. 2. Emotional unavailability is one of the quickest ways a Sigma female checks out of a connection. Sigma female isn't chasing someone who's numb or shut down. She doesn't have time to decode emotional silence or beg for vulnerability. If a man can't sit with his own feelings, how can he meet what Sigma females need? A Sigma female values depth. She's not here for surface-level conversations or relationships built on autopilot. She needs a connection that feels alive, honest, and grounded. A man who avoids his emotions, or worse, shuts down when things get real, can't meet her where she is. Emotional intelligence isn't optional for her. It's required. She's done the inner work. She's met her own darkness. She's faced hard truths and grown from them. So when a man shows up with walls, avoidance, or emotional confusion, it feels like regression. It's like trying to build something on quicksand. She notices when a man can't express what he feels. She sees it in the silence, in the way he changes the subject, in how he stiffens when the conversation shifts to anything real. And she won't stay to teach a grown man how to access his heart. That's work he has to want for himself. She's not here to babysit his healing or manage his fears. She'll hold space for someone open, but not for someone hiding. Sigma females need presence, not fake vulnerability or dramatics, but calm, grounded, emotional honesty. If a man numbs out or shuts down every time something uncomfortable comes up, she stops feeling safe with him. Emotional safety is everything to a Sigma female. She can't be soft with someone who disappears when things get hard. She can't open up to a wall. She can't grow with someone stuck in emotional survival mode. If he's emotionally unavailable, she starts to detach, not out of spite, but out of necessity. A Sigma female is already whole. She's not searching for emotional crumbs or hoping someone changes. If the space isn't emotionally open, she'll walk. A Sigma female doesn't need chaos or mystery. She needs truth. She needs to know where she stands. She needs a partner who can sit in the hard moments and stay present. That's what creates intimacy. That's what builds trust. And if a man can't meet her there, he loses her interest fast. Because emotional unavailability doesn't feel like a challenge to her. It feels like loneliness. And she didn't work this hard to feel alone in a relationship. She'll choose solitude over emotional starvation every time. Emotional connection isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistency, clarity, and showing up even when it's uncomfortable. That's what earns her loyalty. That's what keeps her energy in the room. And without it, even the most charming man will lose her attention. Not because she's cold, but because she's clear. She's not afraid of emotions. She respects them. And she expects the same level of emotional maturity in a man. She's not impressed by someone who hides behind sarcasm or distractions or false toughness. She wants a man who can face himself even when it's uncomfortable, because real connection requires presence. 3. Needing constant validation is a silent turn-off for any Sigma female. Sigma female doesn't exist to keep a man's ego alive. She's supportive, sure, but she's not a mirror for someone else's insecurity. When a man needs endless reassurance to feel worthy, it creates imbalance. Sigma females don't have time to stroke fragile egos. They want mutual recognition, not emotional babysitting. A man who can't hold his own sense of worth without her constant praise quickly starts to feel like a burden. It's exhausting, and it starts to drain her emotional energy. Sigma female values a man who stands tall on his own. Someone who knows who he is, even without being constantly told. She respects self-assurance, not approval-seeking. Confidence should be quiet, not loud, not needy, not built on how much she's watching or clapping. If a man only feels strong when he's being praised, he's not grounded. And Sigma female sees that instantly. She doesn't want to be the reason he feels okay. That's his job. She wants to add to a man's life, not carry it. When a man starts fishing for attention, playing victim, or throwing tantrums when she's focused on her own path, it becomes too much. Sigma female is not cold. She's not detached. She's emotionally available, present and giving, but only when it's reciprocated. She values connection, not codependency. Constant validation seeking is codependency in disguise. And she doesn't do emotional weight she didn't create. She doesn't want to be with someone who needs fixing. She's not interested in becoming someone's emotional caretaker. She respects emotional growth, but it has to be self-led. A man who doubts himself every 5 minutes and looks to her for identity starts feeling like a child, not a partner, and she's not interested in raising a grown man. What keeps her attention is stability, quiet confidence, inner peace. A man who moves with purpose and isn't thrown off every time she's not validating him. When a man depends on her mood to feel secure, she feels suffocated. And Sigma female always chooses freedom over obligation. If being herself triggers his insecurity, he's not ready for her. She wants a partner, not someone constantly needing to be seen. She wants real connection, not performance. She doesn't fall for the loud ones who demand attention. She notices the ones who don't need to beg for it. Because self-respect is attractive, needing constant validation doesn't make a man soft. It makes the relationship unstable. When one person's worth is hanging on the other's words, it's not love. It's emotional labor. And Sigma female didn't come this far to carry someone else's self-esteem. She came to grow, to build, to thrive with someone who's already whole. She'll lift you, but she won't hold you up forever. And if she has to, she's out. Sigma female isn't impressed by approval seeking. She notices when a man needs the spotlight to feel okay. She's not cold. She just values grounded confidence over noise. She respects the man who knows who he is, even when no one's clapping. That kind of presence makes her feel seen, not used. It builds connection without demand. Look, if this is resonating with you so far, hit that like button. It lets me know you're feeling it, and it helps more Sigma women find this space. Drop a comment if you've ever spotted these same red flags. All right, let's keep going. 4. Lack of boundaries is an instant red flag for a Sigma female. She watches how a man holds his space, his time, and his energy. If he lets everyone walk all over him, says yes to everything, and never speaks up, Sigma female checks out fast. She doesn't respect passive behavior. Not because she wants dominance, but because she values clarity. Boundaries tell her a man knows who he is. If he doesn't have any, he doesn't have self-respect. And if he doesn't respect himself, Sigma female knows he won't respect her either. She pays attention to how he moves in the world. Does he overextend himself to be liked? Does he let toxic people stay in his life? Does he avoid conflict even when something clearly bothers him? Those are all signs he lacks inner structure. And Sigma female doesn't feel safe around that. She needs to know a man can hold his line, not just with others, but with himself. A man who lacks boundaries often loses control of his own life. He says yes when he means no. He gives energy to things that drain him. He tolerates chaos just to avoid discomfort. That's not strength. That's self-abandonment. Sigma female has worked too hard on herself to partner with someone who hasn't done the same. She protects her peace, and she expects the same from the person she shares her life with. Boundaries are not about being cold. They're about being clear. A man who lets people push him around or plays the nice guy to stay liked shows her he hasn't fully stepped into his power. Sigma female doesn't want control. She wants accountability. She respects a man who can say no when it matters, who can protect his space without guilt, who doesn't feel bad for having standards. That kind of strength makes her feel safe and seen. A lack of boundaries eventually becomes a source of resentment. When a man can't protect his own time or energy, he starts burning out. Then he starts blaming others. Then everything becomes dramatic, reactive, or confusing. And Sigma female won't stay in a relationship where she has to guess where the line is. She needs directness. She needs structure. She needs to know that her partner knows himself enough to speak up, to push back when needed, and to hold space for both of them. A man who folds under pressure or says yes to everyone just to avoid being alone isn't ready for her. She's not interested in a man who fears disappointing others more than he fears betraying himself. She values solitude too much to trade it for instability. She'll wait for the man who's rooted, who honors his word, who moves with intention, and who understands that saying no is just as important as showing up. That's who keeps her attention. That's who earns her respect. She doesn't need a man who's harsh. She needs one who's solid. A man who can say no without guilt, who doesn't abandon himself to please others, who protects his peace. That strength, that self-holding, that's what makes Sigma female feel like she's not carrying both roles alone. 5. Trying to control a Sigma female is the fastest way to lose her. Sigma female isn't here to be tamed. She's not someone you put on a leash or place into a fixed role. She doesn't respond to pressure, manipulation, or outdated expectations. The second a man tries to box her in or label her, Sigma female disconnects. She doesn't fight, she just lets go. She values freedom, the kind that's earned, not given. And she expects that same freedom to flow both ways. Control kills connection. Sigma female needs space to move, to grow, and to breathe. She needs to feel like she can express herself without being policed. If a man starts setting rules for how she should act, speak, dress, or think, she starts losing respect fast. She doesn't need a guard, she needs a partner. Someone who sees her as an equal, not as a possession. When a man tries to dominate or steer her life, she doesn't rebel loudly. She simply exits. She doesn't entertain drama. She protects her autonomy. She's spent years building that freedom and won't trade it for attention. A man who tries to confine her doesn't understand her essence. Sigma female isn't wild. She's intentional. She's structured, focused, and self-responsible. But that structure comes from within, not from someone else's rules. She respects leadership, not control. She can follow direction when it's earned through trust, integrity, and wisdom, but not when it's forced, not when it's rooted in insecurity. Control is often just fear in disguise, fear of losing her, fear of not being enough, fear of being seen. But fear isn't love. It's control pretending to care, and Sigma female sees right through it. She doesn't need permission to be herself. She doesn't shrink to keep the peace. She doesn't play small so someone else can feel big. If a man feels threatened by her independence, he's not aligned with her. Real connection can't exist where freedom is threatened. Sigma female thrives in mutual respect, in trust, in a space where both people grow side by side, not on a leash. If a man can't handle her fire, he shouldn't step into her space. She's not interested in being managed. She's interested in being met. She doesn't need to be controlled. She needs to be understood, to be heard, to be trusted. When she feels safe, she's naturally loyal, soft, and open. But the moment control creeps in, she goes cold. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. She knows what control leads to: resentment, silence, disconnection. And she's not repeating that cycle. She's not stubborn. She's self-aware. She's not aggressive. She's free. She values a man who can stand beside her without trying to box her in. One who understands that love is not ownership. It's presence. It's respect. It's freedom. That's the energy that keeps her close. Not rules, not guilt, not pressure, just freedom, just respect, just truth. Control isn't strength, it's fear in disguise. And Sigma female doesn't respond to fear-based love. She responds to trust. She rises in relationships where both people breathe freely, where choice matters, where individuality isn't a threat but a strength. 6. Shallow conversation is a quick deal-breaker for a Sigma female. If it's always surface level, she's not staying. She craves real talk, depth, intellect, vulnerability. She's not interested in endless small talk, gossip, or meaningless chatter. That kind of exchange drains her. Sigma female thrives on curiosity, exploration, and truth. Her mind is constantly processing, questioning, observing. So when the conversation never goes past the surface, she starts to feel disconnected. It feels like a performance instead of a connection. She wants to talk about the real stuff: ideas, emotions, challenges, experiences. She wants to know what someone believes, what shaped them, what scares them, and what they're reaching for. If a man keeps it shallow, it signals fear, disinterest, or emotional avoidance. And she doesn't chase emotional unavailability. Sigma female needs more than just a voice in the room. She needs presence. She needs a man who can hold a real conversation without deflecting or changing the subject every time it gets uncomfortable. If the only topics are sports, gossip, or surface-level opinions, she checks out. Not because she thinks she's better, but because it's boring. She's not here to waste words. She wants connection with substance. Intellectual stimulation is foreplay to her. Emotional depth is where her respect grows. And mutual curiosity is what keeps her engaged. She doesn't need a man to be a philosopher, but he has to be real. He has to be willing to be open, honest, and thoughtful. If he's always hiding behind distractions, humor, or deflection, she knows she can't build anything meaningful with that. It's not about being perfect with words. It's about being present in them. When she speaks, she's not looking for instant agreement. She's looking for engagement. Can he challenge her respectfully? Can he hold a nuanced conversation? Can he handle silence without fear and vulnerability without retreat? That's what matters to her. Because for Sigma female, words aren't just noise, they're energy. And if that energy stays at the surface, there's no depth to root in, no foundation, no spark. She's not trying to impress or be impressed. She's trying to understand and be understood. That's where trust is built. That's where intimacy starts. Without it, the connection fades fast. And once it fades, she rarely circles back. To her, connection without depth is just distraction. She doesn't need more distractions. She needs meaning. The kind of meaning that comes from conversations that go somewhere real. If a man can't meet her there, she moves on. Not dramatically, just decisively. Because Sigma female knows that without depth, there's nothing to hold on to. No depth, no interest. Shallow words can never hold her attention. She's not asking for perfect phrasing or deep poetry, just truth, just presence, just something real. Even silence with depth is better than words with no meaning. Sigma female listens for what's behind the words. She watches body language. She pays attention to tone. When a man speaks with thought, with clarity, with honesty, she feels safe to open up. It's not about being smart, it's about being real. And that kind of realness, that's what earns her attention and her trust. Real talk. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who tried to control you, let me know in the comments. You're not alone, and if you're getting value from this, subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next. Let's move into the next one. 7. Lack of boundaries is a serious deal breaker for a Sigma female. A man who doesn't protect his time, energy, or priorities, she can't trust that. Boundaries aren't about control, they're about self-respect. When a man constantly says yes to everything, avoids conflict, or puts everyone else's needs above his own, Sigma female sees it as weakness. Not because he's kind, but because he doesn't value himself enough to protect his space. She needs someone with a backbone, not someone who gets pushed around by life. If he can't say no when it matters, how can she trust him to hold space for her? Sigma female respects clarity. She watches how a man handles pressure, how he responds to demands, how he deals with his own limits. If he folds every time someone else gets loud, she checks out. Because she's not looking for someone to follow, she's looking for someone to stand beside her. A man who lacks boundaries is unstable. He might seem easygoing at first, but over time, it turns into resentment, burnout, and confusion. And Sigma female doesn't deal in confusion. She's clear with her own boundaries, and she expects the same in return. She needs to know he can hold his own, that he can say, "This is what I need," without guilt or apology, that he can walk away from toxic energy, that he won't trade his peace just to be liked. That strength, quiet, grounded, no drama strength, is what keeps her interested. She's not impressed by the man who tries to please everyone. She's impressed by the man who knows himself, who can stay centered no matter what room he's in. When a man lacks boundaries, everything becomes messy. There's no direction, no standards, just endless reacting to what others want. And Sigma female doesn't want a man who reacts. She wants one who decides, one who moves with intention, one who protects his energy like it matters, because it does. His boundaries tell her he has structure, that he knows where he ends and others begin, that he doesn't feel guilty for protecting his time, his space, or his mind. That's not selfish, that's adult, that's attractive, and that makes her feel safe. She's not looking for someone to be perfect. She's looking for someone to be solid. A man who has clear lines, who communicates them calmly, who doesn't let guilt or pressure shape his choices. She needs to know that if life gets loud, he won't disappear. That if she needs support, he's got the bandwidth for it. Because he's not spread thin, chasing approval, or trying to fix everyone else. Boundaries build trust. They build stability. They let her relax into the relationship without having to carry it all. And if a man can't bring that to the table, she'll leave it empty. Not because she's cold, but because she's clear. Her peace matters. Her standards matter. And she'll never apologize for requiring a man who respects himself enough to draw the line and hold it. She doesn't want a man who fades into the background. She wants someone who leads himself, who owns his space, and stands firm in it. 8. Inconsistency is one of the biggest turn-offs for a Sigma female. One day hot, next day cold. Sigma female doesn't chase confusion. Sigma females read patterns fast and walk without drama. She's not here to decode mixed signals or figure out someone's mood swings. She values consistency because it shows emotional maturity. If a man's energy shifts constantly without explanation, it signals instability. And Sigma female doesn't build her life around unstable energy. She needs to feel safe, not by being coddled, but by knowing what's real. When someone shows up one way on Monday and a completely different way by Friday, it feels chaotic. She doesn't feel grounded in that space. She feels like she's wasting time. A Sigma female is highly intuitive. She picks up on tone, timing, presence, and patterns. When a man's words don't match his behavior, she notices immediately. She doesn't call it out with drama, she simply detaches. That's not cold, it's self-respect. She's not interested in the highs and lows of emotional immaturity. She wants steady. She wants emotionally clear. She wants someone who knows what they want and shows it consistently, not perfectly, but clearly. A man doesn't have to be emotionally intense or hyper-available. He just has to be consistent in how he shows up. Sigma female can't build anything with a maybe. She doesn't invest in uncertainty. Inconsistency is a sign someone's not ready, not clear, or not being honest. She won't fight for clarity that should have been given. If a man is hot one day and distant the next, she's not sitting around wondering why. She's already moving on. Because Sigma female doesn't get attached to potential, she pays attention to patterns, and when the pattern is instability, she opts out. Quickly, quietly. She doesn't ask for closure, she gives it to herself. Because chasing someone's changing moods is not a relationship, it's emotional chaos. And she didn't work this hard to end up in another emotionally draining situation. She has no desire to play therapist, detective, or savior. She's not trying to fix someone's inconsistency. She wants to build with someone who's already stable enough to be steady. And consistency isn't about texting all day or repeating the same routine. It's about emotional presence. It's about doing what you say you're going to do. Showing up when you say you will. Speaking with clarity instead of games. Sigma female has outgrown guesswork. She respects straightforward energy. She doesn't get excited by hot and cold dynamics. She gets tired, real tired. She's already mastered solitude. She knows peace. So if someone brings more confusion than clarity, more questions than answers, she cuts the cord, not to punish, but to protect her peace. Inconsistency feels unsafe. It feels scattered. And Sigma female will always choose emotional security over short-term excitement. She doesn't need fireworks. She needs follow-through. Consistency builds trust. It builds rhythm. It gives her the space to actually invest emotionally without second-guessing everything. She's not asking for perfection. She's asking for presence, for someone who means what they say and shows up when it counts. Because when someone is consistent, she doesn't have to overthink. She can just be. If you're still here, you already know this content is hitting different. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet. It's free and it keeps this kind of real conversation going. All right, last point coming up. 9. No personal growth is a slow death to attraction for a Sigma female. If a man's mindset is stuck, she won't stick around. Stagnation kills attraction. She doesn't need perfection, just evolution. She doesn't care how far along someone is. She cares that they're moving, growing, trying. A man who stays the same year after year, who stops questioning, who avoids discomfort, who hides behind habits. That's someone a Sigma female can't connect with. She's constantly evolving. She reads, reflects, rebuilds. She faces herself. She wants a partner who does the same. A man who never grows emotionally, mentally, or spiritually starts to feel invisible to her. Not because she's judgmental, but because growth is how she connects. She's not interested in potential. She's interested in patterns. Is he expanding? Is he learning? Is he shedding old layers? Or is he coasting, clinging to comfort, afraid to stretch? She doesn't need him to have all the answers. She needs him to ask better questions. A man who isn't growing can't meet her in the spaces she lives. She grows in her thinking, in her awareness, in her purpose. If he's still stuck in survival mode or playing the same games he played 5 years ago, she can't relate. Growth creates safety. It shows her he's self-aware, that he owns his flaws and works on them, that he can admit when he's wrong, that he evolves from failure instead of hiding from it, that he's present in his own life, not just passing time. Sigma female doesn't want a man who performs. She wants a man who evolves, who keeps becoming, who's not afraid to tear down what's not working and rebuild from the ground up. A man who doesn't grow will start to resent her for growing. He'll feel intimidated, not inspired. And that creates distance. She wants a man who's confident enough to grow beside her, not compete with her. Growth doesn't mean grinding 24/7. It means awareness. It means shifting old beliefs. It means breaking cycles. It means doing the inner work no one claps for. If a man avoids that work, she loses interest fast, because eventually he becomes predictable, dull, stuck. She's not interested in watching someone settle into a version of himself he never questions. Sigma female grows through challenges. She adapts. She wants someone who challenges himself too. Someone who doesn't see discomfort as a threat, but as a mirror. She respects the man who outgrows old habits, who calls himself out, who puts ego aside for something better. Because that kind of man, he's alive, he's present, he's dangerous in the best way. No, personal growth isn't just unattractive, it's emotionally unsafe. It signals he's asleep at the wheel. And Sigma female has no time to ride shotgun in someone else's denial. She'll wish him well and walk. Growth is not a luxury to her. It's a requirement. It's the language she speaks. It's the way she loves. She doesn't need perfect. She needs movement. She needs momentum. She needs to see that he's becoming, not just existing. That effort, even when messy, is what earns her trust. Here's the real thing nobody talks about. Sigma females are already complete. They're not looking for someone to complete them. They want a partner, not a project. They've done the work. They've sat with their own pain, grown from it, and built a life with substance. They didn't wait to be saved. They became their own anchor. So when a man shows up empty, no drive, no vision, no backbone, there's nothing for her to lean into. She's not looking for a fairy tale. She's looking for something real. A man who shows up with clarity, presence, and purpose. Someone who respects her independence and brings his own. She's not losing interest because she's cold. She's losing interest because the energy doesn't align, because she's not here to shrink herself or babysit potential. She doesn't settle. Not because she's picky, but because she's clear. She knows her energy is sacred. She knows her peace has value, and she refuses to hand that over for short-term chemistry or half-built promises. She needs a connection that feels equal, that feels steady, that feels rooted in growth and honesty. So when a man brings excuses instead of effort, silence instead of conversation, control instead of respect, she disconnects, quietly, cleanly. She's not out here begging for emotional crumbs. She wants presence, real presence. She wants to be met, not managed, understood, not controlled, supported, not saved. Sigma females move differently. They're not seeking chaos or constant attention. They're seeking peace, direction, and someone who gets it without needing a full explanation. If a man lacks purpose, emotionally checks out, acts like a boy instead of a grown man, tries to dim her light, or can't match her depth or her direction, he won't keep her attention. She sees the patterns, she sees the emotional gaps, and she doesn't try to force a fit. That's the difference. She lets go when it doesn't align, not out of anger, but out of alignment with herself. Her time is not up for negotiation. Her energy is not free. Her love is deep, but it's reserved for someone who can meet her in that depth. She doesn't have time to explain what should be self-evident. She values connection, but never at the cost of her peace. So let's keep it simple. Sigma females lose interest when a man lacks purpose, emotionally checks out, acts like a boy, not a man, tries to dim her light, can't match her depth or her direction. These aren't minor issues, they're non-negotiables. She's not waiting for someone to catch up. She's not entertaining emotional guesswork. She's not sticking around for someone to maybe grow into what she already is. She leaves when things get inconsistent, unclear, or ungrounded, and she doesn't return just because someone suddenly realizes her value. If you couldn't see her clearly when she was present, you don't get a second shot after she's gone. Because she's not playing games. She's living a real life, a life with meaning, with direction, with standards. She's not asking for too much. She's asking for what's aligned, and if that scares you, you're not her person. If you're a Sigma female, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. What's the one trait that makes you lose interest immediately? Let's keep the conversation honest, raw, and real. Share your stories, share your clarity. Let other Sigma women know they're not alone in this. And if you're into these kinds of deep relationship breakdowns, check out the next video. I'll link it right here. You already know it's not gonna be sugar-coated. Stay sharp, stay self-led, and never lower your standards for comfort. You weren't made to follow. You were made to lead. Your clarity is your strength. Your standards are not negotiable, and your peace is your responsibility. Own it, protect it, honor it, every single day.